Okay, this is Sheets, and I lied. I said that I wasn't going to be back on Saturday to do the slate, but such a huge slate in the NBA that had so much news come out makes it such a challenging slate to attack. So I figured I would just give it a shot for those of you that are going to play. And yeah, I know some people might say, well, if it's so hard and so challenging, why bother playing? Well, you don't just do this for the money, right? You do this for the challenge and the satisfaction of beating people and all that stuff. But you could also argue that the harder the slate is, the bigger the edge is for the people willing to put in the work. And I mean, let's face it, on Saturdays, people don't put in as much work as during the week at this type of stuff because, a lot of people take the Saturdays off. And I did have a little time between tasks today, so I figured I would take a shot at this. So what we're going to do is we are going to go game by game, although I will tell you that there are some very key pivot points throughout this that I don't want to, what do they say, bury the lead on this too much. There's some really, really good chalk in here. There's some people out, and it makes for some interesting decisions. The most recent news that being that Giannis is out again, and also what's his name, Kevin Love is out. Not to mention what we knew already going into today were those two Sacramento Kings out, Bagley and Fox. So there's all this value that's kind of opened up that uh, comes at a time where you have Westbrook and Harden both playing in a very favorable matchup, projecting really well. In addition, you have Luca back and back again, and so you have LeBron and you have AD and you have all these studs that now you can get in. And so there are a lot of ways to go on this slate. And with this with this value that's opened up, that it's probably going to be chalk, creates some interesting decisions of how you want to be different and how you want to try to win the GPP. So let's do that. But again, I don't want to go in with any preconceived notions except for that. So let's start with the New York Washington game because it is at the end. I want to make sure that we get to that. Um, I will caution also that on Saturdays, news does come out just when you least expect it. Um, Actually, I lied. We're going to start all the way at the end here, the Utah LAC game. See what happened? What you're going to find as we go through the slate is that there's a lot, even though there's 16 or 15 games, there's a lot of guys that are just inferior values to other guys who are really strong values. So I think relative to the amount of players that there are in the player pool, I think that the playable players uh, constitutes an unusually uh, small percentage of those, at least as far as I'm concerned. And I feel as though the ownership issue is not going to be as big of a deal with these types of players. So let's see. Like for example, like when I sort by ownership here, I mean the highest owned players are going to be less than 30%, and one of them is going to be one of those chalk value guys, maybe two of them. So you are going to be able to get in some good lineups that you don't have to go that off the board to achieve. But you'll see that there's a lot of there's a lot of dreck out here, but there's a real decent amount of really good plays that separate themselves from those. So Clippers Utah, boy, it'd be nice if that were a game that you could stack but all the way at the end of this very really long day of low owned guys. But quite honestly, the game is really not very appealing. Um, I mean, I will say that on the Clippers side of things, um, all three of those guys, George, Harrell, and Leonard. I'm sorry, I didn't want to presume you knew who I was talking about. So the three guys that project the best relative to value are going to be Kawhi, Paul George, and actually not Lou Williams in this spot, but Montrezl Harrell. And you could actually play any of these three guys. These three guys do show up as pretty good value. I would think that they're on the lower end of that group of really really good plays. Let's put it that way. Um, and if you want to interlay the ownership deal on top of that, um, I mean, all these guys rate to be below 10%. So I would certainly include these guys in the player pool, especially when you're going to try to get different with some of these one-offs that we're going to get to the need to do that, relatively quickly. So either Paul George or Harrell or Leonard. I mean, honestly, I can't really separate the three of them as far as values go. I would say that. Actually, I wouldn't say that. I was about to say that Leonard doesn't seem to have that kind of ceiling, but I wouldn't go so far as to say that. There's a certain amount of blowout risk involved in this game, but that'll be factored into the ownership as well, and that's why they're 5% in a way. So I would not throw out these guys, Paul George, Harrell, and Leonard. On the Utah side, there's just those four guys that we usually kind of look to: Mitchell, Gobert, Bogdanovich, and Ingles. They all look to be on the lower end of the type of plays I want to make today. When I say that, I mean, there's probably a core of about 25, 30 really, really good values and really, really good plays, combining both points and value. And these guys just don't quite make it. So even though they're going to be low owned, I don't think that I'm going to get to these guys today, just because of the size of the slate and the other values that we're going to have. Maybe I shouldn't have done it this way. Maybe I should have not presumed that I knew what I was going to get to later. But just trust me, we're going to get to better plays later than this. There's one guy I want to highlight here because otherwise we're going to forget. We're going to get to some real chalky Larry Nance at 3,900 a little bit later, and it's probably going to be pretty good chalk. And we're going to get to a real chalky Corey Joseph a little bit later also. And for those of you looking for pivots, and I don't want to be this guy to just give plays or whatever. If you want to really go off the board and you want to take a shot at someone who is not going to project well, but I think has upside that at low ownership, could be kind of a decent pivot, is you could try somebody like Jordan Clarkson, who I kind of touched on in the last podcast or whatever you call this, where they hired him to shoot the ball, and in the few minutes that he played in the last game, you could I don't even know what his end results were. But he played 20 minutes, he only had 11 fantasy points. But he jacked up 12 shots, 6 threes. You know what I mean? Like, he's out there to fire. So a guy like that is going to have a decent amount of upside at infinitesimally lower ownership than some of these other 3,900 guys. So again, not to just give a play out, but because I'm on this game, I want to let you know my thoughts is that he is going to be involved in my in my portfolio management. Let's put it that way. So Portland, LA. This is a very straightforward type deal. On the LA side, both of these guys, Davis and LeBron, both project to be very, very good values. Okay. They're two of those guys that I'm referring to that project to be very good values. Are they the top values? No, but they project to be very, very good values. So I certainly would include them in in my short list or shorter list relative to the amount of players there are of players that I would like to play. On the other side of the game, on the Portland side, unfortunately, well, I shouldn't say that. Lillard and Whiteside both look to be okay values. So if you wanted to try to get contrarian and build a stack with, I don't want to say contrarian, but you'll get to why that is in a minute. If you want to play James or Davis and then run it back with someone like Lillard and Whiteside, or Lillard or Whiteside, you know me. I mean, I'm never going to dissuade you from doing something like that because it does fit all the checks some of the boxes. It's going to be kind of lower owned, and it's a later game, and it's got correlation. So, it's certainly on its face a good play. Is it going to be enough to win this type of slate? I'm not sure, but I certainly am not going to kill you if you did something like Lillard James or Lillard Davis or something like that, or even throw a Whiteside in as well. But aside from that, really not a lot in this game. Carmelo Bazemore, again, on a shorter slate, I could go there. CJ McCollum on a shorter slate, I could go there. But again, there's just much better opportunities, and there's just, you're just going to need to do a little bit better, I think, on this type of a slate where you have a lot of, you will get to them a little bit later, like some real good plays that open up a lot of other things. All right, so Phoenix, Sacramento. Now, this is where we kind of start because Marvin Bagley and De'Aaron Fox are both going to be out. So what this does is this opens up like a world of value from the Sacramento side, and not only that, but we have a game where it's a low spread, so you have a real good probability that they're going to get their minutes, and also a better than average pop probability, right? That it goes to overtime and you get an extra 5 minutes from the guys are going to be in at the end. So it's a very very attractive spot to both play guys from Sacramento and run it back with guys from Phoenix if in fact they're decent enough value. So Sacramento guys that are popping, and I'm not even going to talk about the ownership, although they're all going to be pretty highly owned. They're all probably going to be 15, 20%, something like that. You're going to have um, Buddy Hield. You're going to have Rashard Holmes. This should come as no surprise to anybody. Corey Joseph. Corey Joseph, where is he? He's 3,900. He's going to be starting at point guard. And then Bogdanovich is probably going to get some ownership also. Now, kudos to DraftKings. They did do a decent job of pricing these guys up, right? I mean, Hield, well, not so much Hield. Hield still, he's always around 6,200, but they did price Holmes up to 67 and Bogdan up to 6K, but they're still popping as very, very good value. So these guys are, they're going to be a big part of if a stack, if you want to play it that way. They're going to be a big part of value one-offs if you want to play them that way. But these guys are really, really solid and good plays. You can make the argument that Corey Joseph is not such a great player, whatever it is, but that's all factored into projection. He's a point guard that's going to be handling the ball, who's 3,900. I mean, in a close game, that's why he's projecting well. I mean, the one thing I would say about Corey Joseph, who has a little more risk than some of these others, is that I'm not 100% sure he would close in this game. I mean, I could see variations where, they just have Bogdan run the point with Hield, Holmes, Bjelica, and Barnes or something like that. So I don't know. I guess they've already announced that Corey Joseph is starting, so Yogi Ferrell is not really popping. If they do change their mind and say that Yogi Ferrell is going to start instead of Corey Joseph. Yogi Ferrell at 3K is going to you'll see it get adjusted up in the projections. But I would watch for that one after lock. Like if it becomes like 8 o'clock or 8:30, and they announce Yogi Ferrell starting in place of Corey Joseph, then that's obviously an incredibly good incredibly good play that you could pivot from your Corey Joseph exposure, as will everybody else. But hopefully, maybe everybody be out at dinner or something like that by then, and I don't miss it. Good luck with that. So this is obviously a game where I would like to run it back with someone from Phoenix. Problem is, the problem is that none of these guys are projecting all that great. You have your usual suspects. You have Oubre, Baines, Booker, Rubio. Okay, and Rubio can be very tilting. But again, as I've said before, when you are when you're wanting to stack something, you could give yourself you could use a little nuance with respect to the projections, right? If you have a lot of good values on one side, you could actually hope that the other side doesn't project all that well because you're going to want upside. You know what I mean? You're going to want ceilings from everybody. So if you want your value guys to get ceilings, you're going to want these guys to have ceilings, and you want them to be low owned. And in a weird way, you're going to want them to project not that great so that they stay low owned, especially if the other part of your stack on the other side is going to be somewhat chalky. So I would go right back to Booker. Again, he's priced up from 6,900 to 7,900. I can't imagine why he was 6,900 yesterday. We did very, very well with that game, by the way. We analyzed that really well. Unfortunately, we analyzed it before we knew that Giannis was going to be out. But the concept was still the same, and we played all those guys, and we did let's just say we didn't win anything huge, but we did very well with those combinations. And I'll go right back to an underprojected Booker here in this spot. Moved up to 7,700. Maybe people have some sticker shock and they don't want to play him, so he'll be lower owned because he is lower projected. So I would throw Booker in a stack. Aaron Baines, he's fine also. He's not kind of the stack type of guy I want on this slate. I would want to start with Booker, then maybe go back to somebody like Kelly Oubre, who again he could be somewhat tilting also. But on a slate like this, you could actually go just one of them. You can go Booker with a couple of these Sacramento guys also. I mean, if you wanted to do that. So I mean, you see already that I mean you don't have to play four Sacramento guys. I mean, you can be somewhat, you know, I say nuanced in the wrong way. You could be somewhat intelligent about it. Like you could group where you don't want to play Hield and Bogdanovich in the same lineup all the time. You know, you could group that you don't want Corey Joseph and Bogdanovich. You know, if they're going to be battling for handling the ball, that type of thing. I'm not too worried about that one, but so there's ways you can get away with this without having to play four Sacramento guys. But this does look pretty freaking pure, right? To have a Booker, Oubre with Healed, Holmes, and Bogdanovich. Looking ahead, you plug Nance in, and then you could have a lot of fun with some studs on the slate also within the construct of this stack. So this looks really really strong. Um, so moving backwards, Detroit, San Antonio. Um, aside from Andre Drummond, who looks to be okay, and DeMar DeRozan, who looks to be okay, that game looks pretty miserable from a fantasy perspective on a slate like this. So what that means, what I would do, it doesn't mean I would cross the game off. I would just keep Andre and what's his name, and who did I just say, and DeRozan in my player pool, and those are guys you could throw in at what I think are going to be low ownership if some of your lineups start to look a little bit too chalky, right? I mean, I'm not going to lie to you. I mean, Detroit. I mean, you'll find better values than AD and DeRozan, but they're both going to be under 10%. So there might be a way to dechalkify some of your lineups with, and you maintain that same kind of, you know, integrity as far as projections go. Just not as good as some of the others you might have. All right, I guess moving backwards, Dallas, Golden State. Luka was back in his last game. He played okay. So I can only presume he's going to play better today. Maybe that's a bizarre assumption, but Golden State's on a back-to-back, which makes things a little difficult for them with respect to keeping this game close. But, you know, it's an 11-point spread, so there is that risk involved. So I'm not going to go ahead and stack this game or anything like that. Fortunately, there's nobody that looks that great on Golden State to do that. Golden State, the two guys I'm looking at are D'Angelo Russell, who again just looks to be okay. He looks to be like an Andre Drummond type. Now again, it's not a totally different type of player, but as far as value goes, and Draymond Green looks okay. And as I say all the time, Draymond Green, I will always not ignore his projection, but I will also just give him a little bit of extra upside bump. So I'll regard Russell and Green as just kind of okay plays. And once again, I will put him in one-offs as one-offs to kind of dechalkify lineups. I don't think I'm going to end up stacking this. Um, well, let's think about this for a second. So I guess I didn't really go over this, but Luka does look like a tremendous play. Okay. Even presuming that he only plays 32 minutes, I mean, the projection systems that I'm looking at have him as a real supreme value. Not the best value on the slate. We'll get to those later. But he looks to be one of the top five values on the slate, even relative to his price. So he is he is a really, really strong play. I mean, even if you look at like this type of lineup I have right here, I mean, you could almost put him in, you know, if you make some kind of concessions, like if you take out, you know, you take out Holmes or something like that. You know, as I said, we're going to be able to get to guys like Larry Nance in a few minutes, right? And if we could find some other, you know, way to get some more value, you can make this work, even with someone like Luca, and get some of these guys that you want in this other game. So Luca does look like an incredibly strong play. I don't know if I would spend the salary to run it back with someone like with D'Angelo Russell, especially on a back-to-back. I do think there's a lot of risk playing shooters on back-to-backs. So I don't think I would go that way, and I don't think I don't think Draymond on this slate, where I could give him a little bit of a break as far as projections go. I think on this slate, I don't think I can afford to do that. There's just other guys that are 5%, just like he'll be, that I just think I have a little more projection integrity, if that's a word I'm going to continue to trot out there today. But Luka, certainly fine if you can get him in, and I think he can. Certainly going to play him. I mean, he's going to be highly owned because he always is, I presume. Let's take a look at this real quick. He's 15%, big deal. Maybe I'll try it. All right, going backwards, they have announced that Giannis is going to be out again. So all this Milwaukee value is just completely in play one more time. All right. So the same guys from yesterday, the same three guys, you're going to have Middleton, you're going to have Brook Lopez, and you're going to have Ursan. All right. They're all going to be projecting really well, and they're all going to be very popular. And you can certainly play them. If I had one caution, and then I'm going to give a caution to the caution, is that this is a back-to-back. All right. So if you want to discuss reasons why you'd want to fade anybody chalky ever, it's just because playing back-to-backs are just tough, and I don't think that the fact that it's a back-to-back is factoring into the projections. However, the caution against the caution is that this game blew out yesterday, so these guys really didn't get run into the ground. So it's not as if, I mean, Hurst only played 24 minutes, so that's all they really you want to get out of him today. Look, the other problem is he going to get 17 rebounds, 7 for 8 from the field, and 2 for 2 from 3? I mean, this is, I definitely do think there's risk in an Ursan Ilyasova chalk, but I don't think he's going to be as chalky as he was yesterday. So that's the other problem. Okay. Oh, he certainly is not going to be as chalky as he was yesterday. He was like 70% owned, albeit on a 5-game slate. They are showing him as 15%, and they're showing Middleton as only 4%. Is that real? That's gotta go up. They must not have known that what's his name was out. So yeah, Middleton still projects to be a very, very good play. As does Brook Lopez, as does Ursan. So, hey, if I'm wrong, if those guys are low owned, I mean, go plow them in, But aside from that, if Ilyasova ends up being uber chalk, I could make the case to fade him. But if he's not that chalky, I have no problem playing him again. We're going to compare him to Nance in a minute, and you're not going to like it. But he's certainly very, very good value, as are all these Milwaukee guys. On the Orlando side, Vooch is a very, very strong play. He's not the top value, but he's one of those secondarily good values that I think you should include in your one-offs. It's certainly, I don't want to stack this game per se. You could. For example, you could play all these Milwaukee guys and run it back with a Vooch run back, but you don't have to do that. In other words, Vooch, I think, is a very, very good sound play on his own. So you don't have to say, well, I'm only going to play Vooch in stacks with the Milwaukee guys. You could stack. If you want to fade the Milwaukee guys, for example, and just play him with the Sacramento Phoenix thing and only use Nance, you could do that. So you don't have to just have Vooch with the Milwaukee guys. Vooch I think is going to get his. He's going to get his regardless of whether the Milwaukee guys get theirs. So, Milwaukee's always been pretty bad against centers, and I think this is a good spot for him, which is why he's projected the way he is. All right, next bit of very big news: Atlanta against Chicago. Trae Young is out, and I know secretly somewhere Bobby Fye is smiling because he was very tilted about them running out Trae Young for 42 minutes in a blowout a few weeks ago, and he secretly wished that he got tweaked a little bit. And this is what happens. You run these guys into the ground, and then he sprained his ankle, and he's out, for a little while. So now it's, Chicago home against Atlanta, and all of a sudden Chicago is now a 9-point favorite. And the whole texture of this game has kind of changed. Nonetheless, Zach LaVine looks like, extremely strong play. And, he's just one tier below the top plays on the slate, which, he's a little bit below Luka. Let's put it that way. and he's significantly below these other guys we'll get to in a minute, which comes as no surprise who they are. But the Levine looks great. I will caution one thing. All right. And far be it from me to caution you for playing Zach LaVine because I'm certainly going to play him. But Trae Young being out actually, I think, improves Atlanta's defense a little bit. So I don't know if he was going to be guarding LaVine anyway, but maybe it's not as smash a spot as it could have been. And also considering the blowout risk, he's not as smash a spot as he, is other times, honestly, LaVine. So, but he's certainly one of the top plays, and I'll certainly use him. Now, you would have thought that with Trae Young out, that Atlanta would just be just oozing value. Okay, I will say that I'm going to look at four guys, and they all look good, but nobody looks that great as far as the projections go, which is a little surprising to me. But this is the way I look at it. Should I ignore the projections? I'll tell you what. I'll ignore the projections if these guys are low owned, but if these guys are chalk, I'm gonna fade them. I'm gonna rely on projections if it leads me to a road where I could be less chalky. Let's put it that way. So the guys you're looking at are the guys you'd imagine, like Kevin Huerter. He might actually be handling the ball a decent amount. Cam Reddish, he's another 3,900 guy who, he's projecting as a good value. Is he projecting as a great value? I mean, not really. I mean, he's a good value, so I'm not going to say to fade him completely, but at high ownership, I would certainly prefer Nance, who we're going to get to in a minute. What about between him and somebody like Corey Joseph? I'm going to compare them like really, really quickly, but I mean, Corey Joseph is projecting a little bit better than Reddish. Is it a lot better? I guess it's not a lot better. Just maybe a couple of points, maybe. But so, at equal ownership, I would rather go to what's his name to Corey Joseph, but Cam Reddish looks fine. I mean, he looks fine. And is there anybody else here? Yeah, there was Herter, Reddish, Collins looks good, but not great. Thought he would look better. And DeAndre Hunter just looks just kind of okay. And these Bembries and these other guys who you'd think look really, really good just aren't really popping. So I don't know what to tell you. I was really hoping or anticipating, that Trae Young being out would increase all these guys' projections, but it just hasn't. So I don't know what to tell you. I would probably, rely on the projections if these guys are chalky, and use some nuance if they're not. But I guess I'm going to be staying away from these Atlanta guys. So in total with this game, I think Zach LaVine is a really, really good play. And now he does come with some blowout risk. All right, so keep that in mind. And as far as ownership goes, what is he looking like? Again, I wouldn't say this is early. I mean, it's pretty late in the day for me to be doing this, actually. He's only looking at 10%. I mean, he looks fine. I mean, I'll definitely get in there. All right. Boy, it's a big slate. Hey, but I'm glad we're getting through it. New York, Washington. Boy, oh boy, can you imagine that New York, Washington, a 230 total and a 1 night and a close spread is not like a huge stacking opportunity? Well, maybe it is. Let's take a look at it. Yeah, I mean, not gonna lie. I mean, Bradley Beal looks like a really, really good play. I have to look at this Q tag because they did come out of the game. He came out of the game due to a calf injury. Didn't practice Friday. I would be careful about this. I'd make sure that he's playing before locking him in at 7:00. That this could be. Oh boy, I really hope he plays, because if he doesn't play, then all other kinds of nastiness happens with respect to daily fantasy in this game. But he is popping as a really good play. Washington has nobody, and the Knicks don't play that great defense. And it's a close spread, high total, which is why he projects well. And I would say he projects on that level as Zach LaVine. You want to know the truth? I mean, relative to value, relative to everything else. So, Beal could fit into this type of thing also. So it's and again, I don't want you to think that we're necessarily playing these Phoenix Sack guys. These are guys that kind of just like kind of left in the lineup. But Beal looks like a really, really good play on his own. Now, if you could stack him back with someone from New York, they just don't project that great. Randall, Payton, Marcus Morris Jr., Barrett. If this were a much juicier stacking game from the Washington side, like I've had multiple guys, then I would give the projection systems kind of a break and say, you know what, I don't care about the projections. I'll let the correlation make up for that with the Knicks. But if it's just Beal that I would run it with, I don't really think I could make a case to give these Knicks guys that big of a boost. So, as gross as it is, this game is probably going to just be resulting in one loss for Beal for me, if anything. The other thing I will say is that if Beal is in fact questionable, why play him? I mean, you know what I mean? Like when they are projecting him, they are projecting him assuming that he is healthy. So if he's questionable, even if he plays, is he going to be 100%? I doubt it. I think that on a slate with all these different options, at that level, like if I could play Zach LaVine, if I could play Luka, whatever it is, why play someone who's questionable? I don't know, but he is. That is going to be the one play I make from this game, if in fact I make any at all. So, all right, Brooklyn, Houston. So this is a. I don't want to spend too much time on this concept, but both James Harden and Russell Westbrook are projecting through the roof in this game. Now, depending on what projection systems you look at, obviously, but one of the ones I'm looking at, who I kind of trust sometimes, most of the time, actually a couple of them, they have them as such layup values and both on value and points that if you run optimals, you're going to get them both in your lineups, which is really, really strange, right? You would think it's so strange on a 15-game slate to have an optimal spit out both of these guys in there. Now, again, because you have Nance, Corey Joseph, um, and the Milwaukee values, you can do it, you know. And the one where it doesn't make a lot of sense to do it, right? Because the first thing you would naturally think is, how can one guy really make a ceiling if another guy's, how can both of these guys make a ceiling when they're going to be taken from each other? Let me suggest two things to you. And again, I don't think I'm going to do it. Okay, but if you were going to want to do it and play these guys both together on a zillion game slate, I will say that you're not really rooting for these guys to get their ceilings. You're just rooting for them to get their medians, which should be good enough. Okay. What you'd have to be able to do, though, is then find ceiling type games for the rest of your lineup. Not every position, but you don't want to take kind of the safer plays along with the high median projections of James Harden and Westbrook. You'd want to get more of kind of a wilder and more upsidey type plays than, I like, for example, like Vooch. I wouldn't put Vooch, not that you could get away with it, but Vooch in a lineup with these two guys. And like, let's say the difference in Corey Joseph and you could put in Jordan Clarkson as opposed to Corey Joseph in a lineup with those two guys, because you're going to want real ceilings from these guys. And do you need to have low owned guys? Now, again, here's another thing you might think about. While both of these guys are going to project to be, highly owned, because you know what, they for good reason, 25% maybe from Westbrook, maybe 20% for Harden. What percent of the lineups are actually going to have them both? Not a lot. Don't forget, there's a lot of experts out there who quite rightly, quite correctly, will just auto group these guys when they will say, okay, I want max one of Harden and Westbrook, like most people do max one of Davis and LeBron, but max one, McCollum and Lillard to a lesser extent. Okay, so you're gonna get some differentiation if you do play them both together. And the cool thing about it, and this is what I'm kind of thinking about nowadays, is you're getting leverage on the people you want to get leverage on. You know what I mean? Because like the sharp players, I would imagine that's the first thing they would do is when they're making these groups is they would say, I don't want both these guys in the same lineups together for a good reason. But if your projection systems are such that their medians are so high that you don't really need ceilings from either of them, maybe that is a really kind of a low-owned way to play this really big slate is to play Harden and Harden and Westbrook. So like normally you would think, okay, if I'm going to have Harden and Westbrook both smash, I'm going to need the Nets guy to really smash. Not that would be great, but I don't think it's 100% necessary. All right, all you need is that to keep the game somewhat close. So you need just kind of these guys to kind of make their medians, or maybe have one guy get there. So maybe if you somehow get Dinwiddie, can you do this? Can you play? Maybe this is all just a rotten idea, but I'm just kind of just thinking about this. Can you play with the value out there? Harden, Dinwiddie, and Westbrook. I bet you can. I bet you can. I mean, I don't want to fill this in, but think about the guys we've talked about, right? Oh, you want to do this? I think the guys we talked about. Think about playing guys like this. Think about who were those guys that we talked about before. How about um, Corey Joseph? Go all the way down to him, right? I mean, you can get away with this rather easily if you want to know the truth. So you can do this if you want. Um, but again, in a situation like this, you might even need to do something like, boy, if you get away with this, I don't know where Clarkson is. They probably list him as a shooting guard. You have to figure it out. But again, I don't know if I'm going to do it. But this is what I was gathering from the first analysis of the slate was how many optimals you ran that spit out both these guys. And before you just dismiss that as an idea, um, again, when you talk about ownership is interesting because it's just because both these guys are going to be 20% owned. That doesn't mean that that even 1% of the people are going to play these guys together. So this is going to be pretty off brand for me to do this. So I might make one build with it though, just to see what happens. Um, aside from that, on the sides of this game, what's his name? Clint Capella was ruled out. So another really good bit of value that popped up is going to be PJ Tucker. He gets a lot of rebounds anyway. And with what's his name out, Capella out, he's probably going to play a lot of minutes at the 5, so he's going to get rebounds as well, even more rebounds. So you could play Tucker. You could play Tucker as a one-off. You could play him as a stack in this game if you wanted to. And again, if you don't want to do this Harden Westbrook thing, you can certainly play one of these guys and run it back with Nets guys. So what I would do with the Nets guys is what I always do with the Nets guys. You start with Dinwiddie because he's the point guard, and he actually projects really, really well. Now, the 4 guys beneath him do not project well at all, but we're willing to give them a little bit of a pass if we were going to stack them. So the first guy I would put in is Jared Allen, always that upside guy, and couldn't hurt the fact that Houston has no center today. So, and then what I would probably do if I wanted to get really, really funny is I would include one of the wings, like either Prince, Harris, or Temple, and probably be smart about it and set a rule that I can only have one of those 3 and just kind of see what happens. They're all going to project very similarly. So, pick your favorite. Go 1-1-1. I mean, honestly, I don't think there's a lot of difference between these 3 guys. So if you want, you could build a little bit of a stack with Dinwiddie, Allen, and Temple, run it back with Westbrook and Tucker or Harden and Tucker. And if you use Nance and Corey Joseph. I mean, you could get whoever you. I mean, you could play so many good players here. Um, and that's what's interesting. You know, this Nance business. We haven't even talked about him yet. Is really really big, and and Joseph, even if he's not a huge, incredible high upside play, he frees up salary to do all kinds of nice stuff. And with ownership not that high on anybody, I mean, you could it's gonna be a fun slate. Miami, Philly. Did I like anybody from that game? Yeah, Miami, Philly. You have the same situation as some of these other games. You have one off that looks really, really good. So Jimmy Butler looks to be a very, very good play on his own. And he's going to be very, very low owned. I mean, he's on a back to back, which will keep his ownership down. He had not that great of a game yesterday. I mean, he's fine. Keep his ownership down. And he's playing Philly, who, very, really good defensively. So that might keep his ownership down. So he's projecting, nonetheless, to be an extremely strong play. So he is, again, one of those guys that I would put in my, one-off lineups, put in my one-off list to add, in this would be a Houston stack, or I could play in the with that Phoenix stack. So Butler is a guy I would put in there, but don't get too fancy. I wouldn't go crazy with any of these other Miami guys. Bam looks to be just okay. I really wouldn't go there. I wouldn't say I wouldn't go there. I would say that he's on the lower list of players I would play. Okay, he would probably just make the list. And Philly, I don't like anybody. Embiid, not to shout out my props or whatever, but we're pretty good about fading him the other day, right? They almost went to overtime, but he had the Christmas hangover, which I knew was going to happen after just owning Giannis. He was very, very pedestrian in his last game. Is he going to bounce back right away? Maybe, but on a slate like this with not projecting all that well, I'm not going to probably get there. I know Bobby's going to yell at me for this, but I'm just not going to. I mean, he just doesn't project well enough for me to give him that extra Embiid narrative bump at this particular time. All right, so Cleveland at Minnesota. I am operating under the assumption, again, that Cat is out. Let me see. What does it say? He's questionable. Oh, appears to be heading in the right direction. Okay, so my view is that if he plays, I don't want to play him. Again, it's just my view of guys that are coming back from long absences. When they come back out, if they're, in a huge slate, when they're, really high priced, I just don't need it. So I'm probably not going to play him. Now, he's going to be low owned if he plays, but it's just not going to be for me. I just don't think it's way too much risk for the upside. Now, again, if in fact he doesn't play, all these Minnesota guys are awesome again. Wiggins is awesome. Teague is great. Dieng, even on DraftKings, is great at 6,300. I shouldn't say great. They're all good. Wiggins, Teague, Dieng, Covington, who we hit pretty good the other day. Even before overtime, I thought he would have a good bounce back game, and he was really good. So all four of these guys look very, very good. Do they look as good as the Sacramento guys? That's a good comparison. No, I think the Sacramento guys look better a little bit. Sacramento guys, I think I prioritize over these Minnesota guys, but Minnesota guys are going to be lower owned. So if in fact Cat's out, I think the Minnesota guys could be a good pivot off the Sacramento guys if you wanted. This is a fun bit slate to balance ownerships and to balance different considerations. I'm glad I'm kind of going through this. So Cleveland, Kevin Love is out, and I was anticipating this would happen. And when I looked at the salaries and I saw that, what's his name, Nance was 3,900, that was going to be the end of that. He's going to project as the highest value on the slate by an incredible margin, just on a points per dollar basis. And I don't know if I want to give my opinion on whether it's good, whether it's fadeable or not. I will say this, that the projection systems are going to be in really heavy agreement that this is an incredibly good play. Okay, they're going to project him for 30 points. I mean, like, how do you not play him? They're projecting him for almost 8x as a median. So they're going to have him at 30% ownership. I find that incredibly difficult to believe. I think he's got to be more like 65%. I do. Because using him just allows you to do all this other stuff. I mean, it allows you to get all these Lucas and these Hardens and Westbrooks and everybody else you want. So I really think that he's going to be 65% owned. I don't know if I can fade that. I can come up with reasons to fade it, and not reasons. I can come up with other guys. Like I can come up with Clarkson and Joseph and Ilyasova, whatever. But Larry Nance's probability of exceeding those guys is extremely, extremely high. Let's put it that way. So I would, not try to come up with too many reasons to fade him. Is he fadeable? Sure. But I am on a 15-game slate. Sure. But I'm probably not gonna do it. Anybody else on Cleveland? You would think Tristan Thompson would project really well considering Love's out, but he's just not. One guy I would throw in just as, again, kind of a wild upside type play who's going to benefit that might be left out a little bit is Chetty Osman. 5,800. Who's going to play him at 5,800? Oh, he's nice. 4,400. Sorry, that's right. Nobody. So Osman could be a good play as well, and he's going to be really, really low on. But make no mistake. I mean, Larry Nance is the premier play from a value perspective based on the numbers on this slate. So I wish I had a really good reason to fade him. I don't have one right now. Two more, huh? Indiana, New Orleans. And I'm glad that we did it this way. Got through a lot of stuff. There's a lot of really tough spots here. All right, so Indiana, on the Indiana side, Sabonis and Brogdon look like the best of just really bad projected plays, which is very surprising, right? You think they're playing New Orleans, they project well, but they're just not. They're just projecting as just blah, which is helpful. On the New Orleans side, you have two guys to project decently and two guys that are just secondary. You're going to have your Drew Holiday and Brandon Ingram, which makes a lot of sense. You would think that they wouldn't project as well. You would think, like, if Indiana were playing New Orleans, that the Indiana guys would pop because they would have the pace upgrade, and the New Orleans guys would fall because they would have the pace downgrade. But it's just not the case. I mean, the New Orleans guys happen to be projecting pretty well. So Drew or Brandon Ingram, I would certainly throw these guys in that mix of just not quite the top plays, but kind of like a play that you can make as a one-off. So either Drew or Ingram. And then moving down a little bit, Ball and Favors, they're next, but I don't think they're going to make it for me. So again, like, look at the context of the slate. You have all these kind of cool guys that you can plug in as one-offs that are not really stackable. Just check your ownerships and just don't be afraid to just throw it in when it might not make a lot of sense, or when you're like, wow, how am I putting him in this lineup? I mean, you need to differentiate yourself from some of this chalk that's going to be out there. So you have all these guys that project to be kind of decent, and even though you can't stack them, you could just kind of just filter in and out of your lineups, and you never know which one of these guys goes off. Toronto, Boston. Now this one's going to be a little tilting, but if you can get away with this, I mean, I will just say that Kyle Lowry projects to be, from a median projection, pretty much just as good of a play as some of these other guys we've talked about, like the Drew Holidays, the not quite as good as Jimmy Butler's, but guys a little worse, like Lillard, projects similarly to Booker. So with that said, no one's, I mean, who's going to play him? They're playing the freaking Celtics. He never seems to do anything. He almost got ruled out of the Christmas Day game going into halftime. That was a little tilting. But he's going to be incredibly low owned, and you put a number up with him on the board at 7 o'clock. You could then at 3% or whatever he's going to be, then you could late swap later, like if that's what you want to do with your Saturday night, you know. But if you, it might be necessary. Like if you put a 60 up with Kyle Lowry against the Celtics when no one else has him, then you can go on to your later games and chalk the crap out of them. You know what I mean? Because you're not going to need to play Jordan Clarkson, for example, right? Later when you got a Kyle Lowry at 3% in the books. So I would try a little of this even, and this is another one of these guys that you could kind of throw in. Now, again, you think we've gone over a lot of them. We've probably gone over only like 20 guys that fit this bill. So we've gone over 20 guys in a couple of stacking situations on a 15-game slate. So even though it's a huge slate, I think we've kind of made it small in a way. On the Boston side, Kemba, Hayward, Tatum, Brown, not quite going to get there for me. Kemba would be the one guy. So if you had to pick one, you want to put one lineup in with Lowry and Walker? Oof. Don't know if I can do it. But maybe. Why not? So Walker would be the one guy from the Celtics I would throw in. So again, what did I do? I mean, this is an incredible slate. I mean, it really is. I'm really glad that I spent some time doing this because certainly a lot more interesting than this freaking NFL thing for tomorrow with God knows who's going to be playing. But hopefully I did a decent enough job with that. But for this slate, I mean, if you win this slate, you've earned it. Let's put it that way. You would have figured out which of these chalk guys to play between Nance, Corey Joseph, all the Milwaukee guys, the Minnesota guys if Town sits. And then you're going to have to figure out which of these games to stack if you want to stack any of them. You want to stack, the Phoenix-Sacramento game, like I said. You want to stack this Brooklyn game. You want to go some off the board and play the double Westbrook Harden, be a psycho, do that. Or are you going to be that guy who's a freaking genius and just picks the one best play from 8 games and just outpoints everybody? Okay. I don't know. I think it's a very challenging slate. It's certainly not a slate where a casual player is going to have much hope. Let's put it that way. And with that said, it's probably going to happen, right? One guy's going to play his lottery numbers and play his favorite players, and he's going to win. He's going to beat all the guys running 150 lineups. So that's all I got. I hope this thing uploads, and I hope it's not too late for you guys to act on it, if you even want to act on it. Hope you enjoyed it more than anything else. Have a great rest of the weekend, and I guess that's it.